Lifetime Adoptions webinar tonight. I'm really excited about our guests. I think because for Kim and I, who's also joining me tonight, Kim King with Lifetime, she and I have often enjoyed Sean and Charlene's presence on webinars when they were waiting to adopt. And so it sort of feels full circle to have them here to share their adoption story from beginning to new beginning, as you will. So if you have questions tonight, I would love to try and include those as we move through Sean and Charlene's story. And you know that I know how open they are and how much they want to encourage you this evening and help you with the things that they learned along the way and the things that they learned that they absolutely want other people to benefit from. So type those into the questions or chat box on your screen as they come to you. And then also, if you're joining us by phone but you still have access to email, you can email me directly at Libby, L-I-B-B-Y, at lifetimeadoption.com, and I'll see those questions come in. And then, of course, too, you know, what I like about tonight's audience, all of you joining us, okay, it looks like we may have lost Libby. This is Kim King, and like Libby was saying, thank you so much for being with us tonight. And we are so excited to hear more about Sean and Charlene's story from their perspective and the encouragement that they have to share with you each tonight. If you're new to us here at Lifetime, then if you haven't yet filled out an application, you can do so at lifetimeadoption.com/apply. And if you have any questions that maybe we don't happen to cover tonight as we hear from Sean and Charlene, if maybe you have questions that are more so related to the program here at Lifetime or your specific situation, feel free to give us a call. Our office will be open again tomorrow. The regular number is 1-800-923-6784. You're welcome to use that toll-free number to give us a call, and we'll be happy to answer your questions. We are generally available 8 to 5 Pacific time. And if you have any application-related questions, I'm happy to help you. My email address is kim@lifetimeadoption.com. And if you haven't yet joined us on Facebook, I encourage you to do so. Maybe that's something you can do right now. Just go on over to lifetimeadoption.com/open.adoption. Just checking to see if Libby is back again. Now, Sean and Charlene, thank you so much for joining us.
We're glad to be here.
Glad to be here.
Great. I mean, you guys are such a fun couple. I've really, like Libby was saying, we've enjoyed your presence, not just on the webinars, but, you know, any chance we've had to interact with you guys. I mean, you're so honest and open about what you're feeling at any given moment, yet I just get this feeling that you guys really are so positive, and I think that's really important to anyone's adoption journeys, just to try and maintain that positivity. And right now we're looking at the front photo, the slide that Libby has prepared, and that's Sean and Charlene with their little baby girl. And tell us a little bit more, you guys, tell us what's going on in this picture here.
Well, this is actually, we had a little photo shoot at our home done when she was 2 weeks old. So we brought Miss Audrey home from the hospital, and this was taken right at her 2-week birthday. And so we've got the 2 redheads there looking down at our precious little angel.
Mm-hmm. And she is now, we were just talking, she is now 5 months old.
She'll be 5 months on the 11th.
Time is flying by.
It sure is.
Yeah. Are you guys still kind of like in disbelief, or when you look down at her, you know, what do you think? Like how do you guys feel when you look at each other and you look at her and go, wow, we have a baby?
I don't know, Daddy, you want to answer that one?
Yeah, I mean, I'm still in kind of the wow, and you know, just thinking about her giggling always makes me smile. Yeah, and it's amazing how much formula she drinks now compared when we first got her.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure she's a guzzler.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I mean, I still get teary-eyed. I'm getting teary-eyed looking at these pictures that Libby has up. You know, it was such a long journey for us, and I know Libby's got questions to ask us around that, on how we came to the miracle of adoption, but we had such a long journey, and to finally have it end with such a happy ending, it's almost surreal sometimes. So Sean and I are just overjoyed. I mean, every day we're thankful to the man upstairs for this incredible miracle that he's given us, and we're incredibly grateful to our birth mother and our birth father, and we just love this girl. She's so surrounded by love. It's just unbelievable.
Mm-hmm. So take us back, you guys, to the beginning of your journey to become parents, and tell us a little bit about what was going on as you started to walk through that path that ultimately led you to baby Audrey.
Okay, Sean, you want me to? I'll take off and. Yeah, I'll take off and chime in. But Sean and I got married, 7.5 years ago, and you know, we were a little bit older when we got married. We were 37 and 38, and you know, so we were a little bit older on the parenthood. It was our first time getting married, both of us, and it just, I jokingly say, it took me a while to find my little knight in shining armor, and we knew that we needed to start this family process right away because we were a little bit older. So we started right away, and you know, the trying part, and we were able to get pregnant on our own twice within the first year or so of year and a half of being married. We had 2 miscarriages, one at 5 weeks, one at 7 weeks, and then after that, we decided that we probably shouldn't, you know, fool around here. We probably should get a little bit of help. So we went and had our meeting with a fertility doctor, and they were thrilled that we were able to get pregnant on our own. And so we initially started with, for those of you familiar with the fertility process, we started with IUI, and we ended up doing 5 IUIs. The third one ended up working, but we ended up losing it was a miscarriage with no heartbeat at 9 weeks. And so then after that, after the 5, and I'm skipping through a lot of detail here, but you all get the drift, and if you've been through this, you know what I'm talking about. Then we moved on to IVF, and so for those of you that know about IVF, it's a much more cumbersome, much more invasive, much more emotional, much more financially challenging process. So we went on to IVF. We ended up having huge success with our first IVF in that we implanted 2 embryos. They both split, and I was pregnant with quads. Sean and I about had a heart attack, and you know, we didn't quite know what to do. So we were pregnant with quads. We had 4 heartbeats, and within 1 week, we after we had that news, we lost 3 of them. And so we were down to 1, and that was our final, you know, we were just hoping and praying that this would be the one to work. Well, we ended up taking that wonderful little soul to 18 weeks, and Sean and I lost that baby at 18 weeks, which was just devastating and heartbreaking for us. So we recovered from that, allowed ourselves time to grieve, and then went on and decided we were going to do 1 more round of IVF. So we did 1 more round of IVF, which was a failure, but we had 1 frozen embryo after that, which we then implanted, and that frozen embryo that we called Hope, we knew that would be our final IVF and final process with fertility. We took that frozen embryo, implanted it, and we were able to carry that lovely, wonderful little soul that we called Hope to 14 weeks, and we lost that pregnancy at 14 weeks. So in about a 4.5-year time frame, Sean and I had been through 5 pregnancies with 8 little souls that we had lost, and I had been through 6 surgeries. So at that point, this was 2 years ago, April, is when we lost our 5th pregnancy. And in May, we met with our fertility doctor, and he basically, the 3 of us together just decided we're done. We're done with shots. We're done with everything. So, Sean, do you want to maybe take it from there? Because at that point I was an emotional mess and trying to figure out which way was up, and that's when Sean really became my strength, and we decided on the path of adoption. But maybe, Sean, you can chime in on how we got there.
Yeah, I guess I'm gonna back up a little and go to the December or November before. I can't really remember the holidays. We were channel surfing, and we found there was a holiday adoption special. Sorry, I'm choking up a little. And it just kind of hit us that, wow, this is something we never thought about. It wasn't even really on our radar, and all of a sudden that was something that came to the forefront, and we ended up watching the special, and we really didn't think much more about it. And then when we did talk with our fertility doctor, he said we could continue, but he didn't really recommend it. Char might call me an ogre, but I was kind of like, I'm done. I was tired of sticking my wife with shots all the time, except when she misbehaved, and it just, we were emotionally spent from the ups and downs, and that's when we started looking, and I started searching on the internet and talking to people, and we knew a few people that had been interested in adoption and getting referrals, and we ended up talking with Lifetime, and it was sort of funny because we thought we were going to actually go with another agency, and we just didn't get the warm fuzzies. Is the easiest way to put it. We just didn't get that, and we're so happy we did go this way. It's sort of funny because I remember with one of the first calls with Lifetime, and I actually think it might have been with Kim way back when. Yeah, it's scary. They mentioned that whatever has happened before, on the other side, it's all worth it. And I get it. I get it now. That was the biggest part, and we were pretty dutiful. We went gung ho. So we interviewed the adoption agencies, and we sort of, once we settled on Lifetime, we went gung ho, and Char being more of the overachiever, we found out that it normally takes people 3 to 6 months to get their portfolios together and all of this. So of course we had to do it in less than 2 and get on board as soon as possible. We just weren't going to, we're used to getting things done and moving forward with it, and this was really a test. So we started gathering our information and getting everything together, calling in every favor, friends and family that we'd ever racked up, and even in our professional lives, and putting everything, getting all the touches. Boy, I mean, it seems like so far away right now. That's the strange thing. Working on the portfolios, the home study, just diving into the paperwork. And I remember when we first got the home study questionnaire, and let's see, I'm going to quote my wife here. "You have got to be kidding me."
Yeah, I think I had a few expletives come out, but I don't get overwhelmed very easily, and we got this home study packet, and I thought, you've got to be kidding me. And that's when Sean stepped back and said, you know what, hon, we're going to take one piece every single couple of days and get it done. And we just carved it out, and every day tried to get one thing done. But it was, I just remember getting that and thinking, oh my, you've got to be kidding me. But we knew.
I love hearing you guys say that, because I know that I actually had a conversation with a family just last week who is struggling with their profile because they feel like it's just such a big project, and I've talked with families about their home study like that. I think it's really validating to hear you say that you had to swallow a big lump in your throat and think, how is this going to happen? This is a lot. But then to, like you said, break it down into those steps. I think that is such valuable advice that sounds so easy that it's so easy to forget.
Yeah, I remember, I think Char got sick of me saying, well, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. And I think we finally went down to, okay, we're going to do like 1 page of this thing, or like one section, and we just we just powered through it. And I remember Char going through pictures while I was going through some of the other documentation we needed for the home study too. So we're trying to get everything kind of done. Our toughest part was actually, this we were at a wedding in Montana, and I'm trying to remember, but our flight basically got canceled, and we got stranded in Montana for a day.
We did, and we went to the hotel lobby, and we both got a glass of wine, and we sat there and we just pounded out all of the paperwork part of it, and we got it done.
Wow.
I mean, we did. We just got it done. We got it done. It probably took us 4 or 5 hours, and we just sat there and we opened up our laptop and just tapped away, and we got it done.
Yeah, it was. I mean, in the morning, I think we were excited because we're going. Okay, we have an extra day. Well, let's go whitewater rafting. And then we thought, wait a minute, we got this crazy gift. Let's do this. How often do we get a day? So we did sit there in the lobby bar, and it was really fascinating because I think everyone at the hotel before lunchtime knew what we were up to, and they were stopping by to say hello and see how it was doing, and we found out a couple of them had been touched by the gift of adoption, and wow, it was just amazing. It was just amazing.
Well, and the other thing that was a huge labor of love, and for those of you on the call that have been working on your portfolios, it's a labor of love to do those portfolios. But we worked so closely with, was it Tanya? I think it was Tanya, back and forth and back and forth. I think we had 12 different iterations of it, and we went down to font size and background. And we were fortunate enough that we called in a huge favor with my brother-in-law, who happens to be a graphic design artist, and he designed it for us. But pulling together all the information on each page and what verbiage and what pictures, but we pulled it together, went back and forth, and then finally got it done. But net, that is what made the difference for us. And we'll get to the story of Wendy, but we were chosen.
Well, I mean, and we don't necessarily even have to go in chronological order, because I do think that a lot of times, even if you've completed your profile 6 months ago, a year ago, whatever that may be, there comes a time when you start thinking, is it enough? Did I put enough in there? Did I put too much in there? Is this really us? So how did you guys finally settle on, you know what, this is us, we're going to put it out there, and we're going to have some confidence that it's going to work for us?
We had a lot of people read through it, both on our side and on Lifetime's side, and I think you can work on it and work on it and work on it. You always think that you can improve it, but we finally really, really loved what we had, and we thought it was a true reflection of who we were. We had the serious side, but one thing that we did is we're such goofballs, and we love having a good time. I mean, you can see from the picture that's up right now with, not only our feet, but Ginger's feet there, our dog, her paws. I mean, we're just goofballs, and one of the things that helped us get through this whole process was having a sense of humor. Not only through the fertility process, but also through the adoption process. And I know Libby and Kim can attest to that, and Sean's comments on the conference calls. But one thing we did is we definitely followed the Lifetime guidance on what to put in your portfolio and your profile. But then our back page, what we did is we took some of the goofy takeout photos that we had, the outtake photos. I think Sean's sticking his tongue out at one, and then he has my hair across like a mustache on another. And I mean, they're just goofy photos, but that depicted our personality on the back end of it after doing kind of the protocol things. And then we used that back page to just be silly.
Right, and that was something that stood out to Audrey's birth mother, right?
Yes, that's correct. She actually chose us because, well, the profile was the reason. I mean, that was 100% the one thing that she was presented through Lifetime, and she was sent a whole bunch of profiles, and ours was the one that she chose, and that's what made the difference for her. And I think the outtake photographs were a big part of that.
Absolutely, because and not everybody shares the same type of sense of humor, and so you both had to find a unique way to show what your character, what your relationship is like, whereas, I don't want for families ever to think, okay, so we've got to get kind of slapstick and goofball and do the exact same thing so that we can get chosen. No, it really came down to that's who you are, so it had to come out. And just like I've worked with families who are very creative, or even if you're very organized, that your profile can reflect some of these little things about you that is going to attract a birth mother who really clicks with that. That's going to fit something that she identifies as what she wants her child a part of. And I was going to bring up this photo here. Looks like shortly after he brought Audrey home, and it's Sean, so that everybody could see Ginger's face. Because also having a dog was important to Audrey's birth mother.
That's correct. We were told that the reason we were chosen was because we were married and we were educated, but really one of the important things to her was that we had a dog. It was really, really important to her. And so Ginger actually played a huge part in the selection process for her.
Yeah, her top 3 reasons were the dog, a sense of humor, and education. I thought that was kind of interesting. So, but when we put together our portfolio, we were also we wanted to make sure that it really did represent who we are, because we could. And we had talked about this. We couldn't imagine a worse thing. I remember Char asking me, I forget where we were having dinner, but you just stopped right in the middle, and you're like, does our portfolio really say who we are? Like, is it really us? And it was, it was that kind of thing. It's just, it has to express who we are, because I couldn't imagine anything worse than actually meeting someone with an expectation of who we might be, and then finding out it's not really us. And we wanted the right baby for us. And I can't imagine anything more perfect than little Audrey. So I think that care that we took in really evaluating and having friends and family kind of review, and those people at Lifetime and countless corrections making us do and things like that. So.
I want to interrupt you too, because I also know that part of you, when I think of you as a couple and as a Lifetime family, it comes to mind, the sense of humor, compassionate. You guys were just very on board with, we got to do what we got to do, and you wanted to stay connected, but you also put your trust and your faith into, these are the pieces, we've done them, let's let them work. But I know it wasn't always as easy as that, and that one of the things, Sean, that always will stand out in my memory is just practically every webinar you expressed a little concern that maybe being redheads were kind of like old enough to be chosen. And I just wanted to bring this up because we had a couple comments here. I'm going to read one of them because it's funny. She's actually a Lifetime family right now. Says, I love that the dog's name is Ginger. As a strawberry blonde, I appreciate this. And so I figured you could also speak to how did you keep that confidence going behind knowing that we're just who we are and we're going to be chosen, because I know that it wasn't always easy for you, that you did have your low moments while you were waiting to be chosen, even though you had confidence that you'd done everything you could.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely had our moments. I mean, we signed the Lifetime contract in June of 2011, and we brought Audrey home in June of 2013, and it was a solid 2 years. I think one of the things that really helped us was staying connected to Lifetime, and we tried to make every single call, and even though at the end some of it felt repetitious because we had heard it before, it was more about just staying connected. And Lifetime was really our lifeblood, and we didn't speak with our coordinator every month, but we definitely tried to stay connected. but the conference calls made all the difference in the world. And I mean, I know Sean and I talked this morning about we just hope and pray that this call can help inspire some of you guys out there and give you hope that it will happen. But we had our moments. And Sean, I'll let you talk about March of this year. Kind of, that's when we really hit our low. And I'll tell you, every Mother's Day was hard for me every year. Baptisms were hard for me. Christmas was hard for me. I mean, Sean and I are both the oldest of 3, and we've got 5 nieces and nephews on my side and 3 on Sean's side. And, you know, we've got multiple God kids that are all around us, and we love the kids around us. We're huge Disneyland people. We love going to Disneyland, and all we wanted to do was just have our child so we could be a part of all that. And it was hard waiting. But, Sean, I'll let you share what happened in March. I mean, we really hit our low, so I'll let you talk about that.
Okay.
After Sean shares this, I just wanted to break before this because this comment just came in, and I think it'll set you up too. I think it'll really bless you because to me this is a model of, like you were saying, connecting through all these webinars and just trying to stay tapped in. Cindy just said, I remember his mentioning in a joking way the 2-headed redhead thing on a webinar just before they adopted. I think it was a matter of 2 or so weeks after. Very sweet. It was early to mid-spring. So here, to me, this is so cool because we probably read a comment that Sean typed in, you know, a question, and that other families identified with that or just remember that. And I love it because you're all on the same team, and that each of you, I know, I've heard from each of you that you pray for each other, that you remember seeing families on Facebook or on the website, and that when you see them get matched or adopt later, that it's like this celebration because you almost feel like a personal connection. And I just love this because here's someone here tonight that remembers you guys participating in webinars before you even were parents.
That's
so
beautiful.
The impact,
That's wonderful.
The impact here is so cool. So, Sean, you hit that bottom.
Yeah.
How did you get back up?
Oh, boy. Yeah, the March. I can't. Oh, wow. Yeah, we hit rock bottom. We had wow. I think we'd basically given up. 2 things kind of stand out in that. And I never do. I sent a text to the pastor of our church and just said, hey, we're having a crisis. Marriage, faith, family, I don't think we could get any lower. And his reply was what was not as dramatic as you might expect. It was like, let's talk. Within 15 minutes, I think we got a text back from his wife saying, clear the schedules, let's have dinner, you know, a couple days later. So we talked about it. We were still kind of down, but we were trying to keep living our life and sort of push this behind us. And it was difficult because we'd really just given up. And I'll go in, I'm going to fast forward a couple of weeks. It was just terrible. And I think in the second week of that spiral, we had, you know, if nothing happened, we were coming up on our 2-year mark. We were going to give it up. We were just going to be the greatest aunt and uncle in the world. And oddly enough, we're in Vegas for Char's work. And like I said, we'd given up. We just decided to live our life, and we cut loose with a whole group of people we were hanging out with, and I guess I can say this, we were playing craps till 4 o'clock in the morning, had way too much to drink, and the next morning at 8:30 we got a phone call, and the only reason it got picked up is I thought it was related to some of my commitments. I had a new guy starting off at work and thought he might have had some trouble, so that was the only reason we answered the blocked call, and it turned out to be our call that we'd been matched.
Yeah.
So the roller coaster was
least
just
expected it.
was
Absolutely,
mind-blowing.
when we least expected it.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm not suggesting drink too much in Vegas and lose all your money to craps table for it to work. But
No.
we've been told to keep living your life as you go through, and that's what we had tried so hard to do. And I think at some point we kind of lost that lesson, and that's when we fell in the spiral. But we had our pastor's family, we had our church friends, and I reached out to Lifetime also. I sent them an email to say, hey, we're hurting, and they, see, I'm all choked up. This is terrible. They came through.
I think what's really neat, though, is that we talked with our birth mother about the timing, and what's really weird, and this is God's hand in the whole thing, is that our birth mother at that same time was going through the portfolios. So when we were hitting our rock bottom, she had been sent all these profiles to review, and she was overwhelmed. So we were literally both overwhelmed at the same time, and then over those next 2 weeks, our birth mother had been reading all of them and chose us, and we had been getting support from Lifetime and our church family. And then here we are in Las Vegas, and we get this phone call at 8:30 in the morning that our birth mother wants to talk to us. I look back on that, I'm like, that was absolutely God's divine presence in both her life and our life simultaneously. Amazing.
Right, which I think is so hard to remember. Sometimes I think even in hindsight it's hard to remember until maybe things have settled down a little and you can think, oh, wow, so when we were going through that, she was just finding out she's pregnant, or she was just deciding to choose adoption, or whatever was going on the other side, that when it feels like despair or hopelessness. And honestly, I want to point out that feeling can come whether you've decided to officially start an adoption pursuit or if you're in the middle of one already. Because whatever's bringing you to this journey, you might feel a little bit unsure if it's ever going to happen based on things you've gone through already. And to know that on the other side of that is another woman, maybe another couple like you guys, were matched with birth parents, that is also going through a time in their life that they're not quite sure how they're going to get through either. Mm-hmm. And that you come together in the middle for this little baby, and suddenly you meet each other, and it all just kind of connects from there. But it takes a while. There's like really hard tread on both sides to get to that middle. Mm-hmm. And I just want to share how many comments just poured in as you guys talked about that, because these people saying, I feel like I don't have hope. It's so great to hear their honesty. I really needed to hear that they went through this too, but that it still happens. So it's wonderful, I think, to validate that, because you still got through it, and then mm-hmm. you were still ready for her. Even though you were caught up, you felt like you were a little caught off guard, you were still ready. Like, no, yeah, let's make this work. Okay. Mm-hmm. Nothing held you back. Do you, this is your first match opportunity, right? You hadn't had a fall through or anything like that before?
Correct. This was our official first one. Correct.
Okay. Which is common with us. Kim and I talk about this a lot, where, most families, it just takes one. They match and then they adopt. Did you guys ever have that fear, knowing with open adoption and knowing you're going to talk with her and get to know her, but how did you get through that fear or that risk of what if they decide not to do this adoption?
Well, I think we knew all along that that could happen, and I think what really helped us was, and this goes back to all the lifetime calls, is we had heard so many stories and had prepared so much for the worst and knew that it could happen that we were ready for it. I'm kind of skipping forward here a little bit now to the hospital, but when Sean and I were driving up, our birth mother had a C-section, and Sean and I were driving up to the hospital, and we knew that with a C-section we'd probably be in the hospital 3 or 4 days, and we knew that we wouldn't have Audrey's custody until the day that our birth mother was released from the hospital. And those are great shots. We need to talk about that. But those are the first times that we met Wendy and John. So I'll get to that in just a second. But anyway, we went to the hospital, and Sean and I basically prepared for, if she changes her mind, this is what we're going to do. And we decided we were going to give her the car seat and whatever clothes we came up with and wish her well, and that we wouldn't get angry and we wouldn't get upset, and we'd go back home. But that's not an easy thing to do, but we talk through it.
Right, and that, I would just say that even that plan is above and beyond, because you don't have a responsibility to stock her with her baby supplies if she decides to parent, but that you chose a road that would be gracious and kind and forgiving, even though you would have been in a position of disappointment, maybe a little confusion, wondering, what happened, but that you still could talk about that. I think that's a really good tip, is to, what is it they usually say is, hope for the best, prepare for the worst. Which I don't want to say that a birth mother changing her mind is the worst, but to an adoptive parent in that moment, it's the worst. But it's such a complicated decision moving forward that you have to kind of look at all the possible conclusions and have a plan so that you still come out with grace and kindness and still being yourselves and not bitter and hardened. But did you ever, because I do want to talk about these photos, because a really cool thing you guys had was the opportunity to actually meet your daughter's birth parents before she was born.
Correct.
Did you expect that? I mean, when you guys entered into open adoption and you started learning about that, did you ever imagine it going the way it unfolded for Audrey's adoption?
No.
No.
We were planned for the drop in the lap.
Uh-huh.
That was how we basically figured everything, and we figured that's the worst possible way for it to happen, and that's what we would do. We'd get a call at some strange hour and have to fly somewhere very quickly, and that would be it. I don't think we ever realized what would occur is we'd have plenty of time to not only meet our birth mother, but the father and the family as well.
Yeah, and just to give everybody an idea on the timeline, I mean, we got a phone call the end of March, beginning of April, and we connected with our birth mother and birth father over the phone via a conference call that next day. So on a Sunday we got the call. Monday at 4 o'clock we had a conference call, the four of us, kind of meeting over the phone the first time. And that conversation was a little awkward and initially, and Sean so beautifully just got it out there and said, I can't remember exactly what you say. What'd you say, hon?
Oh, I was just like, hey, I'm sure you're all a little bit nervous. I am too. I've never done this before.
So that just broke the ice, and we all giggled, and our conversation was nothing deep at all. It was about dogs and about music. Wendy and John are both musicians, and Sean, is a musician as well. So they talked a lot about music, and we talked about faith, and we talked about family. It was very surfaced. And then after that, we agreed to get together, and that picture on the left was when we first met, and then we met a second time, and then this is where we actually had the whole family down for, we did a shrimp boil at our house because Wendy and Sean wanted to get to know Ginger, most importantly, and then to see where Audrey would be raised. So we had them down for a shrimp boil, and then that next picture of them jamming to music, Wendy's singing and John's playing and Sean's playing, and they were just making music. Bonding over music. So it was great. It was great. We got to know them and got to know their families, and we just made it real casual and put it all out there, and we had nothing to hide, and it was great. Anything else you want to add, Sean?
I think it sums up. Yeah, it was. Well, we were nervous the first call, and then the first meeting, we went to their home, Wendy's home, and met there. And I remember when we drove up, and we probably had an hour. We got there way too early. Let's just put it that way. We had to drive around and waste some time. And then I remember sitting out front in the car in her house, and I grabbed your hand. We both took a big, deep breath together and said, "All right, let's do this. We don't know what we're stepping into, but hey, let's."
Well, did the music thing ever stand out to them? Because we had a really cool comment come in a little bit ago from another Lifetime family that said, "I remember watching their video. It was so awesome. He played a guitar, and they had lots of Disney footage. I fell in love with their personalities."
Wow.
And here you're playing the guitar, and that Wendy and John have this musical, bug too. Did that come across in your profile in a way that they also identified with? Did you ever talk about that aspect too, just the musical connection?
We
did.
Yeah, that was a big thing. That was actually a really big thing for John, and for Wendy, but it wasn't. It was sort of funny. It wasn't her. In the way she described it, it wasn't her top three, but it was. She liked the music thing, and in fact, we had. I think this was our. Was this our second or no? This is our third jam session or something. So we had a nice. We've had a couple of chances to do some music together, but it was important. That was another thing that came through in our portfolio. There's a picture of me playing guitar, and then in our video, of course, that kind of kicked it off and couldn't keep a straight face with it.
Right.
So.
But again, that you took those efforts to bring out different aspects of who you were, because I also know from working with you and even hearing from you tonight, there is a very serious side to you. So it's not like you're just goofballs all the time and everything was like whatever,
Well, and to be
found this balance.
Yeah, and to be totally authentic, I mean, we were very nervous every time we got together with them because we knew it was a courtship. They could change their minds at any time, and so we were trying to put on our best all the time and be really real and really authentic and be who we were. But sure, I mean, it was a little nerve-wracking every time, and we were always a little bit nervous. And then, Libby, that next photograph getting to the hospital, when Sean and I showed up at the hospital, we were really nervous with that because we didn't know what to expect at all.
Right.
But there we are, right before we went into the C-section.
And this is something I know that you told me was very important to you, that you wanted to share how you handled this whole hospital strategy, because it was something that you and Wendy and John had planned out together, right?
Yes, and for all the families out there that have been matched and have time, one thing that was recommended through us, through the attorney that we actually hired for Wendy, is that we hired a doula to meet with all of us before Wendy gave birth, and we put together a 6 or 8 page hospital plan. So it was all the way down to who's going to take Wendy to the hospital, who's going to be there for the delivery, who's going to cut the umbilical cord, who's going to be in the room. It was all the detail of what's going to happen in the hospital. And she ended up having a C-section, so a lot of that was kind of tossed by the wayside. But when we arrived at the hospital, the nurses were very much, there were all these people on the birth family side, and it was just me and Sean, and nobody knew from the hospital staff kind of who was on first, who the players were. And so I turned to John and I said, John, have you given a copy of the birth plan to the nurses, the hospital plan? And he hadn't. And I said, did you bring a copy? And of course he said, no, I had a copy in my back pocket. So I gave it to John. I said, please give this to the nurses. As soon as that hospital plan was presented to the nursing staff, the whole mood changed, and they realized that this was an adoption situation. And they came out, and they're like, okay, who's who? Who's adoptive mom? Who's adoptive dad? And then everyone started giving us a lot of attention because they knew who we were. And they allowed me to be in the OR for Audrey's birth with John. And then they allowed Sean and I to come back to the recovery area after Audrey was born. And those 2 hours in the recovery were my most, and Sean, just as a family, our most important time together, because we really got to bond and be there with our birth parents and the adoptive parents. And they even had written out, Wendy wanted to hand Audrey to me, and then she wanted John to hand Audrey to Sean. And it was just a beautiful moment, the four of us, with this beautiful baby girl that had been born. But we can't recommend enough how great that hospital plan was.
And I love that, because I know that is something that when we're educating women who are considering adoption, we're talking about you not only get to choose the adoptive parents of your baby, but you get to just decide if you want to get to know them before the adoption happens. You have the option to stay connected after if you want, but also those moment by moment memories that happen at the hospital for just really a matter of hours. That she gets a say over what happens in the hospital. And I know that you both were, like you said, you were trying to make sure that you put your best faces forward. You were trying to respect, their pace and what they were looking for. But then that both Wendy and John, as the birth parents, decided to involve you in the hospital planning is really special, because she could have easily have also just said, I'll let you know when I'm comfortable, with you getting involved, just stand by. But that in this situation, because you had so much opportunity to get to know each other and really talk about a lot of those questions that nobody ever thinks of until the last minute, like how are you getting to the hospital? I mean, if you're already in town, why not offer to take her? Mm-hmm. Or if I've worked with a lot of women who aren't comfortable with that. They want to go with a friend or someone familiar. So that you had the opportunity to just talk about what that will look like. And then, of course, I'm sure that both of you realized that at any given time when she's in labor, it could just be, yeah, scrap that. That's not what I want to happen right now.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
But that you did take the time to talk about it, and that it doesn't have to be this awkward, sticky conversation. And that's actually something Lifetime encourages. But I love finding out about this resource, because it went above and beyond even the paperwork and the plan that Lifetime notifies the hospital. And what I think was probably valuable in that was that it's not to say that the adoption professional that's working with you doesn't have a voice or an authority, but the hospital probably recognized that since this was done by a third party not related at all to the adoption, that it was even more valid, I would say. Just because it went above and beyond the typical private adoption type situation. Mm-hmm. So these photos that I brought up, were these some of the pictures from those early hours when you were getting to know your baby girl?
Yeah, actually the lower left, she's not even 2 hours old in that one, where I'm in the black shirt. So that's in the recovery area. And then the top right, I think that's the day we left the hospital, so she's 3 days old there.
That is a good-looking newborn.
What was it like those couple days being in the hospital and kind of finding this balancing act? Now, you guys told me you did spoil the nurses. Is that right?
We did. So I give Sean complete credit for this, but we came with 15 pounds of gummy bears for the nurses. Three 5-pound bags for all the different shifts, and we were fortunate enough to be at a hospital that was incredibly adoptive friendly. Not only allowing me to be in the OR, but then to allow Sean and I to be in the recovery, and then they made arrangements for us to have a hospital room all 3 nights next to Wendy and John. So Audrey was actually in our room every night, and then during the day she'd go over and be with Wendy and John and whatever family. We had a unique situation where Wendy had quite a few visitors, and I'll leave it at that without going into too much detail, but there was quite a lot of activity for Miss Audrey the first couple days that she was born. We did not have a single visitor. We were just advised, highly advised not to, but there was a lot of activity, and we just kind of stayed focused on, being open and being open to anything that happened, and staying really positive and not saying too much, kind of biting our lips a little bit, knowing that we still didn't have legal say with anything, but at the same time being gracious and just keeping our faith. Anything you want to add there, Sean?
No, that was yeah. The hospital was a challenge on a number of fronts, but the big one was we didn't know. We knew we were going to be there at least a couple of days, and our job is to be as supportive as possible. And we were fortunate in that we had an adoption-friendly hospital. And again, going back to the, I just refer to it as the script, but the plan, the hospital plan, really kind of drew everything together and let everyone know who we were and why we were there. And that just smoothed out so many ways. And I know I grumbled about, oh gosh, I have another expense here, but it turned out to be that was probably some of the best. That was one of the best investments we've done on this journey. And I still think the gummy bears, if you know you're going to be in the hospital a little while, goes a long way with nurses. So.
Or chocolate, maybe, something.
Yeah, chocolate, caffeine, or sugar. So, yeah.
So now, did you guys know more than just Wendy and John? Did you have interaction with their families too?
Oh yes. So we have a connection with both sets of parents, and all of the siblings were at the hospital, and the aunts and the uncles were at the hospital, and the friends from church were at the hospital. So there was quite an entourage that came to visit Wendy and John at the hospital with baby Audrey. But we got through it. That was hard. I'm not going to sugarcoat and say it wasn't hard. It was hard. And what we ended up doing is leaving at night to go out to dinner, and then came back. But the blessing here was we got Audrey every night, and then they would have visitors during the day, and we just would be gracious about it. When we were leaving the hospital, and this is actually us leaving, Wendy wanted to carry Audrey out, and so we all entouraged out, and then Sean was in one car and Wendy's dad was in another car, and the two cars pulled up, and that's when we put Audrey in our car seat and said goodbyes, and there were definitely tearful goodbyes there. It was definitely hard, but we were there was really a clash of emotions. Sean and I were so thankful to finally go home and take Audrey to our family, yet we wanted to be so sensitive to the feelings that Wendy and John and their families were going through. So it was joy and grief all together.
Right, and I think that's such a good point, because I think before you know, I mean, I understand that adoptive parents, they know the choice that birth parents are making to help them adopt. But until you actually know them, I think this is the really unique thing that open adoption allows, is that she's not just your daughter's birth mother. She's this woman you care about now. Mm-hmm. And that you know it was hard for her, and that you feel sorry in the sense that they don't get to raise your amazing, beautiful daughter. You know, that you left that hospital with such mixed emotions, because you were also just elated and thrilled and excited that your dream had finally come true and that they had chosen you. So how does that carry over for you as you think about your future with open adoption? What is it like for you to think about Wendy and John as people you are going to keep in touch with for a very long time?
So great question, and you know, it's still a work in progress for us. We're still figuring it out. We don't have all the answers. We have come to an agreement and that was that it was a verbal agreement with all of us, and of course we're sharing pictures on a regular basis. I use Shutterfly, so I've made it really easy on myself, and they're part of a distribution group for me, and I upload my pictures, and then I pick a couple pictures that I'm going to send to them, and I send them out to all the family members of the birth family that want to have pictures, so we do that. And then these are some of the pictures we've shared. And, then we actually got a text from Wendy 2 weeks, as we were coming home, and the first couple of days, I was texting Wendy pictures probably every couple of hours. It was over Father's Day weekend, and I was texting her pictures of Audrey with all of her cousins, and Sean with Audrey and Ginger, and anyway, I was texting a lot the first couple of days, and then 2 weeks after we brought Audrey home, Wendy actually texted us and asked if she and John could come down to see Audrey, and at that point, we were a little bit like, oh my gosh, what is this appropriate? Is this good? What should we be doing? And we called Joan right away, and we called our attorney, and basically, we had no legal risk at that point. Wendy had signed the papers in the state of California. Her revocation period with the paperwork that she signed was only 3 days after we left the hospital. So at that point, Audrey was legally ours. So there was no legal risk. And then we were just trying to figure out what the right thing to do was. So we had them down, and we, spent quite a few hours with Wendy and John. And then fast forward, we actually, for the first time yesterday, we drove halfway between the two homes and met Wendy and John and their extended family yesterday at a Panera Bread, and that was an ideal place for us to meet. It was, we didn't have to worry about anyone picking up the bill. Everyone picked up their own bill, and we found a private area, kind of in a corner section, and it was a neutral territory, and we kind of passed Audrey around, and everyone took pictures with her, and we were with them for about 2 hours, which was the perfect amount of time, and it went really well. This was from yesterday. So that's Wendy yesterday and Miss Audrey yesterday, and Sean, anything you want to chime in on? I mean, it ended up being a much better than we expected, and Sean and I walked away feeling really good about it.
Yeah, it's it's interesting because the first couple of weeks was a lot of like Char said, a lot of pictures and a lot of things going back and forth, and it's sort of I guess I don't want to sound cold-hearted, but it's tapering off a little bit. And when Wendy and John came up, we really got the feeling that they wanted to, to tell you the truth, John just said, he's like, we just like hanging out with you guys. They're kind of fun to hang out with, so that's a good thing. But they really got the impression that they just wanted to see that she was happy and healthy and fitting in, and then with the family yesterday, that was the overall impression I got. They wanted to make sure that she was happy and healthy and doing well. It was a good. I mean, for me, it was actually a really, really good feeling overall. That and it seemed healthy again. That they didn't obviously want her as their child, or I'm not sure quite how to express it, but they just wanted to make sure that she was be satisfied that she was safe and in a good home and happy. Even though we've all met before and done many things together, this was, to me, it felt like a settling kind of thing. Hey, how's she doing? Good. We're relieved. All right. We can start to be fine.
I think that's beautifully said, because that's what I find working with birth parents and adoptive parents, is that, not to say that she's not going to want to still keep in touch from here on out, but that a lot of times those early communications and maybe even a periodic visit, like you coordinated, and again, I want to emphasize that it wasn't just something you felt like you were out there beck and call. You arranged a date just like you would if I said, hey, I'm going to be in the area. Would you like to get together? And that you coordinated a plan. So it's not like she just, shows up. I mean, who does that anymore anyways? But you talked about it, you made a plan, you carried it out, but that I do think that that is so common that those early communications are really about that peace of mind, and not so much that she doesn't trust you, but that there's just so much to her and John's healing process, knowing that they went through this amazing life milestone at, and they're what, about 20?
You get after you post one picture of Audrey within an hour, and I normally get 100 likes or 40 or 50 comments with each picture that I post. And she said that shows me alone how loved this child is by so many people. She is so loved by the community that's surrounding her.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there she is last week.
What a neat thing for her to tell you that. That's just
yeah.
so neat.
So Facebook I was actually nervous about, and I wasn't sure if it would work against her, or I wasn't sure how it was all going to play out. And Facebook's actually been a really positive thing to give Wendy the reassurance on how loved Audrey is and what a support system we have, because she can read all the comments.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I haven't ever heard someone bring up that point before, but that is really amazing to see how modern technology and social media have really opened up the possibilities for open adoption to be that benefit for a birth parent.
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't want to take up too much of your time, because I know you want to dote on your baby girl, and I know that everyone in the audience also too is winding down for the evening. But we've had so many comments coming in tonight, just thanking you so much for your honesty, for your candid answers. Is there anything on your hearts that you wished you'd known back then, or that having gone through it now you just want to make sure that future adoptive parents hear from you?
I think that I'm actually speaking at our women's church retreat this coming weekend, and I spoke last year. Last year I spoke on contentment and waiting for God's timing, and when they asked me to do this, I'm like, you're kidding me, right? You want me to talk about being happy and waiting? And it actually was a really good thing, and now I'm being asked to come back and kind of close the story out. But one of the themes for me personally was just sharing, and Sean, I'll let you, I know Sean shares this with me, but I want him to also give his feedback. This whole process, whether it be through fertility and the losses of all those pregnancies, and it brought us to our knees, and brought us to our knees with our faith, and really challenged us. But now I look back, and I've never been challenged in my faith as much as I've been in this process. And now looking back, I've never had my faith more renewed than it has been through this process. So I think that's kind of my theme with this whole 7.5 years of my life that Sean and I have been through together. How about you, honey?
Yes, that's well said, my love. The challenge that's there, and when they say it's all worth it in the end, uh, yeah, it is. I couldn't be happier. But I guess, but for me, one of the things is you're going to be tested, and you ultimately have a choice. There's an incredible support system. I mean, you're on the call, so that's a start. You're not alone. Life goes on. Just keep your life going. Don't stop and wait around and wonder about this stuff. And I think when we stopped living our life and started wondering, that's when we went into that little spiral. So keep life going, and it is all worth it. And if things start to go bad, or you feel they're not going the way they should, reach out to friends, family, support group. So.
Okay. My connection cut out for just a minute, so I hope you can hear me. Something that stood out in both of your answers was just the point that you were being used in the middle of your story too, and that your story's still going, of course. But what I love is just how I see every adoption story being a testimony even before they've adopted. And certainly you guys just proved that with your very gracious words, that you were already being an example of perseverance and faith and grace under fire, and being real with the hard emotions, and keeping your prayer life going, and also growing and building your relationship. You talked about sharing your sense of humor, staying in communication with each other, and just continuing to be open and honest and growing together. And that's what I hope that everyone on the call could maybe be inspired by tonight, is just to know that even though you're in waiting right now, there's still other things for you to do. And it may not even be adoption related, but there could be other people in your life who are already inspired by your story, by your walk, and that like Sean and Charlene, that you're going to look back on that and think, wow. I mean, because Charlene, until you said that just now, I forgot that last year you had actually connected with me about when you were going to speak.
Yeah, yeah.
And that was so amazing that you could have easily said, it's kind of hard for me to talk about right now. I'm not ready to go there. But instead, you decided, I'm honored that you see this in me, and sure, I'll see how that can come out of me in the stage that I'm in of my story. And how I just imagine when you go back to share what things are like now, just the cheers for joy and the rejoicing that these people will have around you who remembered what it was like for you to tell it last year,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And our church community, our prayer community has been so supportive. People that know us well and people that don't. I mean, it's been unbelievable. So as Sean said, to share, I mean, get people behind you and get prayer teams, and don't be afraid to ask for it, because we certainly did. I mean, we asked for help and we asked for prayer, and we got it.
We had a couple questions. I just wanted to touch on this too before we wrap up, because we had a couple questions as you guys were sharing, just wondering how it was that you actually handled those questions from well-meaning loved ones or even strangers who wondered, well, why hasn't it happened yet, or when are you going to become parents?
Yeah. What's taking so long?
Right.
Yeah. What they? Oh boy. Most of them you try and handle well. sometimes it's going to not sound politically correct, but it's okay to feel the emotions. You know, sometimes you're really angry, and sometimes you're really upset, or sometimes you just want to slug the person that asks those crazy questions in the face. Okay, sorry, I said it. You know what? Usually it's like a polite thank you. We have that handled. Thanks, smile, gracious, move on, and say something disparaging about them later.
Well, and I mean, full disclosure here, after, giving my testimony last year at our women's retreat, there were over 300 women there, and the moderator basically said, hey, Charlene is sharing her story, there are other women sharing their story, we don't want to have anyone coming up giving advice on what to do. But lo and behold, I, of course, had someone come up, and she was telling me all about this doctor I needed to go to that could get me pregnant. And, that's the last thing I wanted to hear. And, I just graciously told her, we've chosen the path of adoption, and that's the path we're going down. We've closed that chapter. We're moving on. And I think so oftentimes people just aren't educated, and they just don't understand. I know if you've gone through fertility, it's the same thing. People just don't, unless you walk the walk and walk the path, people don't understand it. So you kind of have to take a moment to step back and say, okay, let me explain how adoption works, and let me explain how it works in 2013 versus in the 60s. I mean, they're very different. So it's trying to be patient, but also educating people.
Yeah. Unfortunately, you have to be a little bit of an educator when it comes to open adoption. Because a lot of people just don't understand. They have an outmoded concept of what adoption used to be, 50 years ago, or they have some blown out of proportion idea of what an open adoption may be. It's just taken to the other extreme, and unfortunately, it's almost like, because we're with the process, we are the unwilling ambassadors for open adoption. And it's our choice whether we want to be good ambassadors about it or not. But it really is an educational process, and usually once you, a very short explanation, people start to understand what's going on, and a lot of times you can turn that questioning, once they realize what it is, they may become some of your biggest supporters.
And we've had that we've even had to educate our own families. I mean, we've had to do it within our own immediate groups, our own families. So it's just being patient and doing really, really educating everybody.
So I guess one of the things is people are trying to help. So, the best thing you can do is just accept it with some grace and try and educate. But they're trying, in most cases, they're trying legitimately to help, and just acknowledge that part, that they're trying to assist, even though it may not be appropriate.
Right. And then, like you said, you can remove yourself. I know, especially with the holidays coming up, and this is something I'm excited to talk about with Marty in a couple weeks when she joins our webinar, because she always has such great advice about getting through the holidays while you're waiting for your child. And that one of the hardest things is, how do I keep up, a stiff lip and stay positive when everybody around me either has suggestions that I don't want to hear, or doubting words, or just even questions that I don't want to answer. And it's okay to choose, how you're going to get out of those conversations, or how many things you will attend, or, maybe even, I could imagine both of you, Sean and Charlene, having kind of a hand signal
and that's okay. It's okay to get down sometimes, but like Libby's saying, to reach out, and like Sean and Charlene are saying, reach out and be a part of, the calls that we have, and, surround yourselves with people who can pray for you and be that positive encouragement for you, so you're not just out there on your own, I just think that's really insightful. And there was another comment on here that said how they, let's see, Charlotte said they've been distributing Call to Adoption to make people understand what open adoption is and what they're going through. And I think another person said that her husband suggested they, just kind of help people understand what open adoption is. But I think the book Call to Adoption is probably a good tool, as well as, encouraging them to join in on our Facebook page so the people close to you kind of know what's going on here at Lifetime.
Mm-hmm. That's true. I actually see a lot of engagement from family of Lifetime families on our Facebook page, which is really neat to see, because to me it just says that they support you and that they're trying to stay as tuned in as possible. But I think what I get from your story tonight is that you found what works for you, and you stayed as focused on your goal as possible, and you reached out for help when you needed it. And I just hope, I know it's already inspired so many people tonight, and I can't wait to just see how these years now as parents continue to bless you both and your sweet little girl, and that we know that you'll continue to keep in touch and brag about your beautiful little baby as you move forward. So, and Sean, you are absolutely welcome to say that your daughter is the cutest daughter.
I didn't say she was the cutest. I just said she's stinking cute.
Okay. She is stinking cute. We had those comments coming in tonight, too.
Oh, good.
So, well, thank you, everyone. And if you have questions after tonight's webinar or feedback or comments, please feel free to share them with us. You're welcome to write me directly. My email is libby@lifetimeadoption.com. Or you can always write to your Lifetime coordinator. If you have questions about how you can start your own Lifetime journey or take the next step in your path through Lifetime, contact your coordinator or call us 1-800-923-6784. And then also keep an eye on your email, because we have a couple great webinar guests coming up this month in just the next couple weeks. So I hope you all have a great evening, and we will talk with you again soon. Good night.
Good night. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all.
Bye-bye. Have a good night.